Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live presentation titled OPC Security Gateway, where we explain how to apply security using a standards-based OPC Security Gateway. My name is Randy, and I am the presenter today. Once again, this webinar is titled OPC Security Gateway. We're going to be talking about the problem we're trying to solve. Then we'll talk about the security challenge we have in OPC and in automation. We will talk about, in general, OPC Security Gateway. What is it? Then I'll show you the OPC Expert Security Gateway very specifically. I will also show you the architecture, and I'll give a little security example with a demonstration. At the very end, I'll let you know how you can get this webinar recording. And of course, we're going to send you an email. We will include in there some videos on how to set this up. As well, you'll get an invitation to the next webinar, which is about OPC UA, alarms and conditions. So let's get into this. The problem we're trying to solve here. So obviously, OPC servers have a lot of plant automation data, a huge amount of data, and we can access this data, but of course we need security, and of course IT puts firewalls up and they provide some security. And by some security, what I mean is that they do limit the ports. So already they are limiting the number of incoming ports, incoming connection points, if you will, that we can have. They're limiting it, which is very, very good. Some of them even do deep packet inspection, which goes even further to say, hey, what's actually going on this port? But once you're able to connect, you will be able to get everything. So the question is, how do we add OPC security very specifically? For example, you need to be able to turn the entire connection on or off. And by the way, most OPC servers can do that. The difficulty most have is to provide partial information. For example, how do I trust some, but not all of the users? How do I trust some, but not all of the applications? How do I trust some, but not all of the computers or devices that are connecting to me? Also, how do I create my own username and password, an OPC username and password, not a Windows username and password, or not an operating system username and password, but rather a username and password that I create myself in OPC, an OPC username and password. How do I allow reading, for example, but not writing? I don't want to allow you to write. I only want to allow you to read. How do I access some, but not all of the folders? How do I access some, but not all of the items? Also, encryption. How do I turn the encryption, make it not just none, but make it more secure? And there are a whole bunch of other things we can do. But these are just some examples. So that's what we're trying to do, is how do we apply this security? So the solution is going to look like this. We have a couple of controllers, and we can bring in the data via OPC and send it to the client application. The very first thing we're going to do is we'll set up the communication so you can get all of the data. And the second thing we will do is we'll block communication so you'll get some, but not all of the data. And we will even do it based on the specific user who is connecting. Now, I want to point out here that this client, what prevents this client from connecting to these OPC servers directly? Well, sometimes you don't want to do that because that will bypass this gateway. So what you want to do, of course, as a first step, is to put on a firewall that will block access to these servers and will only provide access to the gateway. Now, all of the communication will be coming just from this gateway. All right, so now let's have a look at what's going on. So the security challenge we have when we're trying to get information from our server to the actual client is this. The typical OPC server vendor provides us with no read-write restrictions, no access control list, who's allowed to do what to whom. So in other words, you either have complete communication or no communication, and only connection security is available. So you'll see this in a little bit. You're encrypted or you're not. And many people think, aha, if it's encrypted, it's secure. No, no. Just because it's encrypted doesn't mean you don't have access to all of the data inside. It just means that whoever's listening doesn't understand what you're saying. But this application can get at anything in the server. So the typical vendors don't provide the tools to manage the security over here. Also, the typical integrators only receive on-the-job training, which is just enough, which means that every server is going to be different. And so having a general security gateway makes it much, much easier for integrators. Also, they typically set the OPC UA connections. They set them to none, meaning there is no security. You've got no clue who's coming in. And with OPC Classic, they set the connections that are open to everyone. So everybody has access. So not particularly secure, but that's what the typical integrator does. And to add to the problem, the typical user, because they don't typically audit their systems to see what holes are left, they're usually very unaware of security deficiencies. They're just not aware that they've got communication available to everyone. They're not aware that there is no security. They just don't know. They don't know where you can write to or where you can read from. So because they don't know, they just put their head in the sand and everything keeps going until there's a problem. But this is what's causing, this is the big challenge in OPC and how and why we need to put that security in. So let's talk about a security gateway. And here I'm talking about a general security gateway. In previous webinars, we talked about OPC to MQTT, OPC to Excel, tunneling, and so on. So these were all middleware. So you have OPC and we're going somewhere else. In this case, we're talking about the security gateway to provide a barrier. In other words, this is where we're getting our security from. And this guy needs to be very configurable, needs to be easy to learn. And the whole idea is that it fills the security gaps. Whatever your OPC server doesn't have, this one here is supposed to fill it. If it doesn't fill it, or if this guy has all of the security you need, then of course there's no need for the gateway. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening very specifically with OPC Expert Security Gateway. Well, first of all, the security gateway runs on Windows XP all the way to Windows 11 and Windows 2003, all the way actually to Windows 2025. So from very early to the latest stuff. Also, there's support for OPC UA and OPC Classic. So no matter whether your server down here is OPC UA or OPC Classic, OPC DA, it doesn't matter. This one here brings all that data across. And it runs as a Windows server, a service, which means it's always running as soon as Windows starts. It starts immediately. And it's automatic, meaning there's no logon that's actually required. It'll start up automatically with Windows, which is typically what we want in automation. And it enables you to manage the OPC server encryption and also the access control list. As I said earlier, with the access control list, I can say who is allowed to do what to whom. So I can say user 1 is able to read this, user 2 is able to read that. And they may have something together, they may not. And of course, using only one port. So very, very easy to manage from a firewall perspective. You only need to open up one port. So let's take a look at what's going on. But and I should really mention one port if you're using UA, one port if you're using HTTP, or one port if you're using HTTPS. You can use any of these, but you really only need one port to do this. So let's have a look at what's happening with OPC Expert. So imagine this is the application. I'm going to show you the modules inside. So these are modules inside OPC Expert. When you get OPC Expert, you get all of these modules. So we begin with OPC DA client and OPC UA client. In other words, OPC Expert begins, it ingests, it brings in data via OPC DA, OPC Classic, or OPC UA. So OPC UA DA is an example. And it brings that information into OPC Expert's intelligent engine. So once the data is there, we can send out the data with OPC DA or OPC UA. And if you notice, it's a little bit subtle here. It means that this one here is already a converter. The converter is built into the architecture. You can take an OPC DA and send out OPC UA, or send in OPC UA and take out OPC DA. So it's a converter, and that's the architecture. It's baked into the architecture. Also, you can connect to OPC UA, and with this, you can apply the security, for example, and only give a subset, a small part of what is available in this UA server, which is really what we're trying to do with the security gateway. So these are 4 basic modules. In this case, we can also add a web server that's actually included inside OPC Expert. So now you can have web clients that come in, for example, from a phone or from a tablet or from some remote system. There's also built-in MQTT with an MQTT broker, publisher, and subscriber. So there's a built-in, it's all baked in. So it's you've got a complete pub subsystem, which again also means you can bring in MQTT and send out OPC UA, or publish MQTT and bring it in with OPC UA or DA, just as an example. This conversion, as I said, is baked in. You can also send this data to SQL, for example, MySQL, Microsoft SQL, whatever SQL you want, or to Amazon Web Services, or to Microsoft Azure, or you want to store it in some file format. That's all right inside OPC Expert. And you can also bring in data with OPC UA-HA, OPC Classic HDA, or OPC Alarms and Conditions, OPC UA Alarms and Conditions, OPC Classic Alarms and Events. You can bring all that information in and, of course, send it out as well. And you can also bring all of this information into Excel in case you want to take a look at it in Excel. You can actually have a real-time view in Excel. So once again, all of these modules are included within OPC Expert. All these modules are within OPC Expert, and when you download OPC Expert, you actually get all of them with it, and then it's a question of which ones you actually want to activate, but they're all, or use, I should say, and they're all included in here. But in this webinar, we're actually focusing on these 4 modules right here. So we're not going to bother with the other ones. All right, so now let's take a look at what's going on here. Because with this security, you can take in data from OPC servers and then send it out, for example, to an OPC UA client via OPC UA. Or you can send it to a DA client. See that? OPC UA, and this guy converts it back from UA to DA. So that's baked right in here. Also, you can send it to a mobile app, for example, so on your phone or on a tablet, on the internet. And we've had webinars on that as well. And you can also send it to some foreign system, some other operating system, some Unix variant where you've got Python or JavaScript or C or C++ running on it, whatever language you want. You can get all of that information, typically using a web service, directly from OPC Expert. So again, it's a web service coming out, or if you want, you can also use OPC UA, of course, but it's OPC Classic or OPC UA coming in. So that's the idea. So let's have a demonstration and see what's going on. So in this case, we have a couple of controllers. We're bringing in the data to OPC Expert via OPC servers. So we'll see an OPC DA server and an OPC UA server. And we're going to see how this data comes into this client application. Now, the first step, we're going to set this up. We'll set up the communication, and we're going to see we're going to see how we can get all of the data. So we're not going to apply any restrictions at first. Then we'll put on security and we'll begin to block communication. I'm not saying this is the preferred way. Sometimes you want to reject everything and trust by exception. Sometimes you want to trust everything and reject by exception. I'm not suggesting a strategy. I just chose this strategy specifically because it's a little bit easier to demonstrate. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we have a server computer over here, and we've got a client computer up here. So let's take a look at what's going on. So to show this, I actually have, there's a server, and there's the client. So there's a client PC and there is a server PC. So the first thing I'll do is I'll start up OPC Expert on the client. So we'll just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, quite a bit bigger. And what I want to show you before we begin working with this is what you get with OPC Expert. So when we open the file location, we see just one executable. And when you double click it, you don't need an installation. It automatically extracts all the files it needs. It already does that. It extracts all the files it needs, and it puts them it puts them on the drive and just runs. So there's no installation needed to do that. I will also do the same thing on the server side. You can see the background is a little bit different. So OPC Expert is going to start here, and we will start OPC Expert on the server side. Now, when we start this on the server side, so we can see everything is starting up nicely for us, and we don't need this anymore. OPC Expert's going to start. By the way, we also have another application here, UA Expert, which is another OPC client, and I will run that as well. So we'll have two different clients connected. All right. So there is the client. I've got OPC Expert starting up here. Looks like my system is slowing down here. I've got too many computers running, but okay. So we will just wait for this guy to start. And I will also show you Task Manager, so you can see the processes that are running. So we can see there's OPC expert.exe. That's this GUI right here. And we can also see the system tray, which is this one down here. Just for simplicity, I'm going to exit this so it's not confusing. Okay, here's OPC Expert, and it's set up nicely now. We will open it up. So we can see on this computer, I've got two OPC servers, just like this. And there's the Iconics OPC server. It's a DA server. And then we also have the OPC Expert server, which is a UA server. And there's the Kepware server, which is also a UA server. So I know this looks somewhat funny here, and that's really just to give us some room. So here we've got some room because I want to show you what's going on. All right. So what I will do, the first thing is we'll connect to OPC Expert UA server. You can see a little lock, which means it's there's some security here, but I will go right click and I will go to security. Pardon me. Don't want to go to security yet. I want to make it run as a service first. So when I have it run as a service, right click, I chose service. I'm going to make it run as the local system account. And here, what you will see is OPC Expert UA server running as a service. So these guys we don't need, and we'll give some more room here. Okay, so there is OPC Expert UA Server, and you can see it's running as a service, as the system account. And if we go to services, you can see that it's running as a service, just in case you were wondering. Now, just to make things a little bit more interesting, I will even, oh, no, that's okay. Okay, so here we will go to details. Perfect. And there it is right over here. Okay, so this one is running as a service. And let's go and connect to it. The IP address is 192.168.1.103, and it will add that just like this. We can open up the computer. We can see we got a DA server. We've got the Kepware server. And we're also going to see now we also see OPC expert server. And I can see in here, when I expand it, there I connected to it, and I can see my two servers here, the Iconic server and the Kepware server. And remember, I didn't put any security yet. I can open them up and I can see everything inside them. And of course, I can subscribe to items. So I can go like this, for example, and I can, let's go like this. Okay, so one of the interesting things is this Iconic server is a DA server and the Kepware server is a UA server. And you can see that we're connecting to them via OPC UA. Let's have a look here. And we will click to add a server, OPC TCP 192.168.1.103:57888. This one is a little bit more manual. Need to know the port. There we go. And it's finding the server. Now, if you pay attention here, you can see I have a bunch of connection endpoints available. So you can see there's the red none, which is not secure, and I've got a whole bunch of other connection mechanisms. So the first thing I want to do is I really want to clean these up. So I don't want to provide, because I'm interested in security, I don't want to provide none for sure. I also don't want to provide this 128-bit. You know, it's just not secure enough for me. So back on the server, I right click, I go to security. And here I see everything I am exposing. So I'm not interested in 128-bit. I'm not interested in 128-bit. I'm not interested in anything that's not sign and encrypt. So I will remove the signs. Look at that. And I sure am not interested in none, no security. So I will remove that. Now we only have these three. And I will say, okay. So now that I'm saying, okay, we go over here. And I will rebrowse. And by the way, you can see we lost the connection and it's going to try to reconnect. And you can see this one is already reconnecting. And here I will rebrowse. Oh, rebrowse. There we go. And now we only see 3 connection points available. Okay, well, that's fairly simple. Not much to see here. Let's choose one of them. I'll choose this one. It doesn't really matter. And you notice that my connection is anonymous. Although I'm coming in with a certificate, I'm not giving a username and password. And I will trust the certificate and continue. There we go. Now I can see I've got my OPC server. And just like before, I can see the Kepware server and I can see the Iconic server. And again, these are coming from OPC Expert UA server. If I take these guys here, I can see some values. There we go. And I'll grab some from here as well. You notice I've got all these folders available to me. Wonderful. And I can see my information right here. Okay, so what I just stopped, or what I just did, is I provided some security with the different encryptions that are available. And I said, okay, we're not going to have none. We're not going to have on 128 bits. So we are a little bit more secure, but let's go farther. So next, what I want to do is this. I will go to security. And now that we're done with the endpoints, I'll go to the next step. I'll go to the certificates. Now the certificates, you see, there's OPC Expert and there's UA Expert coming in from the client PC. You can see that this PC here is called client PC. Client PC. That's the name of the PC itself. All right. So now that you're able to see this, you can see these certificates really are coming from this computer on the left. So I'm going to reject these just so you see what's happening, and I will reject this one. But I also need to not trust new certificates, reject new certificates. So I'm rejecting the certificates, and here is what I want to reject, and I click OK. So now that I'm doing this, you can see the connections are going to be reset, and neither OPC Expert, so OPC Expert and UA Expert, everybody's an expert, are not going to be able to get a connection. And I'll give more room here, hang on. Right, bad communication. And you can see I'm constantly failing to get data. Why? Because they are rejected. But watch what happens. As soon as I trust these certificates, just to make it more obvious, we'll go to security. I will go to OPC Expert and I will trust. You can see UA Expert is still rejected, but OPC Expert is now trusted and it's able to get a connection. We're able to get data here. Here, this guy can't, and only because I didn't trust the certificates. So I will trust these certificates, nice and easy. I say trust, now it's trusted. And anybody that comes in will now be immediately rejected. I'll have to go in and trust it manually. And this is a way to stop new connections. Okay, but I'm not done yet. The next thing I want to do, so I'll click OK here. But now what I want to do is start to give some restrictions. And I'll start with only providing access to the numeric branch. So you can see that when I browse, I can see logical, numeric tanks, right? I can see the Kepler server, and of course, I can see everything inside it. And most OPC servers will do that. They'll just give everything. So you either give everything or you give nothing. And that's really what I showed you up until now, is everything or nothing. So now let's go and say, okay, I'm going to give you some partial information. And again, you can see the same thing here. Iconics you can get everything from Iconics, and you can get everything from Kepler as well. Okay, so let's go in here. I will go to numeric. I will right click and say security. Here, I'm going to go to users and groups. Up until now, I trusted by default. And if you remember, both of these are coming in with no user account. Now I will say I'm going to reject by default. I will add, and of course I can restrict by their certificates, but I can add, I can create an OPC user account, and we've got some built-in ones, anonymous and so on. So here I will add user 1 with user 1 description, and I will give a password of 1, and just so that you can see it, and so that I can see it, yeah, I did enter it right. There's the password. I added 1 user, and now I'm going to add a second user. I'll make this user 2 with a password of 2. Okay. And we'll say, oh, I'll give a description. So it's another description. Great. So you can see these user descriptions. You can see their SIDs, security IDs, and we will say, okay. So in fact, I'll check both of them. And remember what I'm saying now is that both user 1 and user 2 are going to get access to the numeric folder. Okay, so I'll say okay, which will break communication. So it will break the communication here because both of these guys, both of them are coming in as anonymous. And sure enough, you can see OPC expert immediately starts to complain and say, hey, I can't get there. Change something. So sure enough, let's go to username and password. What I will do here is this. I will say user 1 and with a password of 111. So it's close, but that's not going to work. And OPC expert's going to say, no, that didn't work. Okay, 1-1. Let me try it. No, that doesn't work. All right, so I try 1 and I click OK. And sure enough, now I can connect. Here, you can see I don't have access to everything. So what I will do, in fact, is go here and I'll force it. Not particularly interested in these. So I'll right click and rebrowse. Rebrowse all data and browse again. There we go. And we'll expand server PC. Now we don't see Kepware. Why don't we see Kepware? Because remember, I only gave access to Iconics, and very specifically, I only gave access to numeric. So you can see that we can only see now Iconics and numeric, not anything else. And of course, everything underneath that. And we're going to take a look at, well, what if I only want a few items? Okay, so we can only see these. When I go over here, I have to right click, disconnect. Why isn't this connecting? Because right now it's connecting as anonymous. And here I'm going to go to properties and I'll say I want to connect as user 2 and I'll save the password with the password of 2 and I'll say okay. Now I will right click and connect and now we'll go over here, Iconics, numeric. Why did we see Kepware? Because we didn't give access to Kepware. And there is numeric. So we can see that we can only see this particular folder. By the way, if you notice, this is a DA server. I'm going to do the same thing for a UA server. So, but before that, I will do this. So here I can go a little bit wild and I will say, okay, let's go to, for example, well, that's enough for this one. If we go over here, go to factory, I'll go to OPC TI. So I will give access to everything in here. So we'll go to security, add user account. This one I will give only to user 1. So that's OPC expert user. And we'll click OK. And should I give, I'll give it also for user 2. Okay, so for that one, we gave to both user 1 and user 2. And I will go over here to random. And here I will do something a little bit more interesting because now everybody is, sorry, both users will get access to OPC TI, but I'll go to random and I will only give access to random one. Oh, security, add, OPC user account. Okay. And I will only give it to user 2. Okay. So that means that only UA expert will be able to get to random 1. Only it will be able to get to random 1. OPC expert will only be able to see OPC TI because that's the only one we opened. So watch this. So we'll go over here, right click, rebrowse all data, and browse again. There we go. So I can see iconics, and inside iconics, I only see numeric. And in numeric, I can see all the folders that are, all the items that are available. Inside Kepware, I only see factory. I don't see random because, sorry, I only see OPCTI. I don't see random because that's the only thing I made available. But when I go here, watch this. So iconics, I have numeric and I have everything. And, oh, I need to rebrowse. There we go. So iconics, I have numeric and everything. And over here with Kepware, factory, I've got OPCTI and I've got random as well. And you see, only that one item. Only that one item is available. Why? Because that's what I gave access to. Right? So what we've done now is we started off by giving access to everything. We gave both OPC expert and UA expert access to everything. That's how we started. Then we said, well, no, I only accept these particular certificates. And we said, okay, I accept your certificate, but I don't have your user, I don't accept your user account. You got to give me a user account. And just to show you, if I go to in fact, if I go, that doesn't matter. I'll go over here and I'll go to security. Oh, remember, we also have UA expert over here. Wrong one. And really here, all I'm interested in seeing. So watch this. I will connect to, I'll go to localhost 57888. There we are. Now remember, we only have 3 connections here available. I will select this and I'm going to try to connect, but I can't connect. There we go. I'll trust it. And you can see it failed. And why did it fail? Remember, because over here, if I go to security, I'm going to see a new certificate. You see, and it's rejected. And you can see that it's coming from server PC. So really, with the security, I can apply security to specific computers. So even if this person had the username and password, it's coming from a different computer. Sorry, no, you can't connect. And I can restrict it or not. I can say anybody with the username and password, or they have to have a username and password and a certificate, or just a certificate. So I've got all of these combinations available to me. Okay, so we've now seen, and folks, please keep your questions coming. I've answered a few already. All right, so what we saw was that I gave complete access to everything. Then I applied the security, I blocked the communication, and I started off by restricting the security, not allowing insecure communication. Then I went to the certificates, and then I added user. So you got to have right now, you got to be secure communication with a certificate from a specific computer, from a specific application, and you have to have the username and password. And of course, you can do any combination of these. So there you have it. And that's the end of the formal part of the presentation. I'll just say a few more words for the people that pay my bills, and then I'll come back to the questions that you were asking a little bit earlier on. And please keep your questions coming, and I'll answer them as soon as I'm done this. So to get automated troubleshooting, you can download OPC Rescue or OPC Expert. You can download both of those. They're free to download, and you can try them out, and they'll help you to troubleshoot and diagnose connection problems. If you get OPC Expert, there are a whole bunch of things you can do, of course. And in this specific webinar, what we talked about is the security gateway, but we've got different webinars on all of these you see right here. To get some hands-on learning, I invite you, please come to our vendor neutral certified OPC professional training, where you will attend one of our workshops and learn how to configure DCOM and OPC UA. You learn how to troubleshoot these OPC systems. You learn the security. You will learn OPC best practices. It's pretty cool. You get a couple of computers, one for yourself. Both are yours, a client and a server. You get communication working, then we break it, you diagnose, you fix, and then we break it again, you diagnose, you fix. So you really have a very good idea at the very end exactly what to do, how to troubleshoot, and how to get your systems working. These workshops are live. So you got typically live remote classes with a live instructor, and they're very, very, very interactive, meaning there's no travel. Obviously, you just do this from home. We've got public classes, but we also have private classes for your organization, and we can do these either remote or also on site. So check out the dates at opcti.com. One last slide, and I'll get back to the questions you were asking. So we're going to send you an email with a link to this webinar recording. You'll also get a link to download OPC Expert and some OPC Security Gateway examples. I'll show you how to actually do what we just did here. So some videos on that. Now, if you don't want to wait, just go over here to this QR code and you can download it right now. You'll also get an invitation to our next webinar, which is on OPC UA, alarms and conditions, and you'll get to see how OPC UA alarms and condition works. That's next month, so a month from now. If you have any questions, give us a phone call, send us an email, or just visit the website. Folks, this is the end of the formal part of the presentation. If you've got to go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to answer some questions for the people that are left and ask some questions, but I wish you all best of luck in your future projects. Thanks very much, everyone.